Next, what you can do is we'll build all the horizontal sections flat on the workbench. This is the forward part of the fuselage, so we're going to apply the welder's glue to both the trailing edge of this, the leading edge of the wing, let that dry for a couple of minutes, glue that in position. To line that up, you can just take your straight edge and measure from tip to tip, and then the width of this, and make your marks on here so you can align that. The trailing horizontal part of the fuselage will line up with the section between the ailerons, so you don't have to mark that. You can just apply the glue, let it dry a little bit, and then put that in position. The horizontal, you have to mark the width of the fuselage on the front of the horizontal. Glue that in position, and you've got the horizontal part of the fuselage. At that point, you can take the vertical part of the fuselage. Actually, before we do that, what I do is I will mark the center line of the fuselage in the front and just in front of the horizontal tail. And then with my straight edge, I'll mark the center line of where the vertical fuselage goes. Once I've marked that, I can then apply the welder's glue along that line, and I'll usually use my finger to smash it out to have a strip that's about a ½ inch wide. That way I get real good contact on the fuselage. I'll also do this bottom edge of the fuselage here. Once that's settled a little bit, I'll carefully line up the front of the fuselage and push it down. I'll flex the tail. Actually, you want to put the aft section on first, line it up. I'll get the aft pushed down, I'll get the front pushed down, and then without pushing in on the middle, I'll lay a straight edge in, and then I can get that middle section lined up and then go in and push it down. That's the nice thing about using contact cement, is that there's not a lot of fuss, not a lot of waiting. Just apply it, let it dry a little bit, press it in place, and you're good to move on. Makes it real quick for the build. Once that's all done, your airframe's pretty rigid. You can just flip it upside down. Do the same thing here. If you want to mark the center line before you put the top side on, you can do that. Same thing here. Press on the front, press on the back, use your straight edge to line it up, and you're pretty much ready to go. Now, alternately, what I'll do sometimes is I'll go ahead and put before I put the fuselage on, I'll at least put my aileron servo in. As you can see here, I've got my aileron servo about a ½ inch behind the forward leading edge of the wing. So I'll take my micro servo, lay it down on center line, use a pen to mark the perimeter of it, and then I can go ahead and cut that out. And then while it's cut out, you can take your other sections of fuselage, because it'll be slightly buried into the lower portion of the fuselage and the upper portion of the fuselage. This servo doesn't have tabs on it, but you'd line your tabs up to sit on the surface of the wing. I like to have my servo arm on the bottom side of the wing. Some people put it on top. It's up to you as far as how you want to do that. Cutting that in first makes it a little bit easier. I usually forget, and so I'll cut that in later after I've assembled everything. After that, you can go ahead and mount. I use a plywood plate for my motor. Just a cutout disc of 32nd plywood. I just cut it out with a scissor or on my bandsaw. Mount the motor to that. I use the welders to glue that in place. I use a little bit of welders and actually put it down in the corners to get a secure joint. I use welders to glue my speed control in place. I use welders to glue my receiver in place. And then the CG is just ahead of 50%. I'd say about maybe an inch to inch and a half behind the spar. I'll go ahead and mount a battery, mount my Velcro on a battery there, and then while holding it at the CG, I'll locate my rudder and elevator servos, just set those on the fuselage without the push rods, and get those fore aft so that my plane balances on the CG with the battery located on the CG too. That allows you to fine tune the CG a little bit better and change battery sizes without impacting the CG. Once you mark these locations, you can go ahead and glue your servos in place. Again, I just use welders. Put it on the side of the servo, put it in place. Make up little carbon push rods. We use 1mm carbon, and then we'll usually add some type of a hold or a standoff to keep the carbon from flexing while in flight. One seems to work for me. Some guys will put 2 or 3 on there. You can use micro control horns. These are little plywood ones I bought. The little plastic nylon ones work well that just have a push pin. You can hot glue those in place, or welders flexes a little bit, so I don't like to use it on the control horns, so I'll use super glue or hot glue to put those in place. I've added a little 1mm carbon rod across the horizontal here that just kind of stiffens it up so it doesn't flex as much. But that's about it. It's really quick. Easily within an hour I can take one from bare painted foam or just bare foam and go in and glue it all together, have all my gear installed, and with the exception of doing some push rods, cutting those to size, so it'll be pretty much ready to fly in about an hour. So it's pretty easy.